Susan, your wonderful novels are intriguing and inspiring to people who are interested in labor history and interested in literature. What motivated you to write them?
Well, I was working as a labor union attorney, and as people became involved with the union and got excited about it, one of the things that was really clear to me is that they had absolutely no understanding that they were joining into something that had a long tradition. And I had read about the group of people, the flying squadron, that had rode the trains. And whenever there was a railroad bull that was really cruel and vicious, they would throw him off the train and threaten him. If you ever heard anybody else again riding the train, any hobo, then we'll come back and kill you. Now, I don't think they ever killed anybody, because usually that was good enough. But I thought that was a fabulous story that the people I knew needed to know about. They needed to realize that they really were standing on the shoulders of other earlier people and sort of celebrate that.
What writers did you read or have you read that brought you to this point in your writing career?
I think probably Howard Zinn, who is a nonfiction writer, was the person that I really admired and wanted. You know, he focused on pointing out the contributions made by ordinary people. So he was an inspiration. And, you know, just various books. In terms of writing style, I don't consider myself a literary writer. I consider myself a storyteller. So I don't want somebody reading my work to go, oh, that's a clever author, or oh, that's a clever turn of phrase. I want them to get so into the story they forget they're reading. And so to that extent, Hemingway is probably the person that I like the best, because I think he was able to do that.
Now, I think you've actually invented a kind of a subgenre of proletarian literature, as the academic community calls it. How would you describe the Sage Adair novels?
I grew up in Portland. I went to school here, and yet I learned nothing about how ordinary people built this city. You know, you look at the names of the streets, and they're all, you know, rich white guys. And yet, in this little town, it's a microcosm of what happened across the country. And you see how wealth was used for good and for bad. And but the thing that we never get is how ordinary people built the middle class through their sacrifice. And that middle class made the United States, America, a very progressive and, force in the world. So I think we need to celebrate those folks.
Now, your novels focus, a big theme of your novels is labor history. You probe labor history for your themes. Where do they come from? Where do the plots come from?
Well, Dry Rot was about bridges falling down in Portland. And what I learned was that the bridges fell down because once the developers had sold the land on the other side of the ravine, well, first they taxed the people in order to build the bridges so the developers could sell the land. Once they sold the land, then the developers managed to get rid of the tax so that there was no money to repair the bridges. And so that was a wonderful example of, I believe in the class society. I believe we live in a class society, and I thought that was a really good example of that kind of thing. So then from that, I knew I wanted to have a labor strike, and I just kind of went from there. And what was wonderful about that particular book is that after I wrote it, I discovered the strike was the bridge carpenters' strike. They were trying to get an 8-hour day. And I discovered then that same time period, they had actually had a carpenter's strike and for the 8-hour day, and they had won, just like my people do. So that was really neat.
Now let's talk a little bit about the characters, some of the lead characters in the novels. One of them is a guy named St. Alban, and he's a labor leader. Who is he? Where did you get this? Where did you get the information to create this character?
It's based on a man named Vincent St. John. He later went on to help form the, I always get it wrong, International Workers of the World, or it's Industrial Workers of the World. I always want to think international for some reason. But before then, he was a hero. He had gone into a collapse mine and led people to safety, and was permanently injured because of it. He was known for being kind and generous, and so I wanted to have him in there. It's kind of a way to honor people. A lot of the characters that I use are based on real people, and I'm trying to honor them and trying to say, hey, this person really lived and they really contributed and we need to honor them. Because that's the thing we don't do, is we don't honor the majority of people who really made America great.
Now let's turn to the key figure, the hero of the novels, Sage Adair, Sagacity Adair. Now he's evolved from the first novel, Timber Beasts, to the latest one, Black Drop. Who is he? Who is he?
He was raised in Appalachia. He worked in the coal mines. It just sort of by happenstance, he ended up saving the coal miner's grandson, and that fellow felt that he had to do something in return. So he took him as a foster child and raised him in a rich man's environment, sent him to Princeton. But he never forgot where he came from, and he got reunited with his mother, and she's a character in the books, and he's happy. He's doing what he believes in, and he's a contented person in a lot of ways.
Has Sage Adair changed from the first novel to the last? Is he different now than he was when we first read him in Timber Beasts?
He usually learns something in every novel. In Dry Rot, it was that rain isn't always bad. Pacific Northwesterners, as you know, we have to really come to terms with rain. And I guess he's gotten more confident, and he's also kind of recognized that he needs to rely on other people, that they're doing this as a team, that he doesn't, and I think that's part of the lesson in this is, you know, there are going to be people to pick up the slack, and I don't have to do this all by myself. And he gets a lot of strength from the fact that there's a collective rather than just a lone wolf kind of situation.
So far, Susan, what has the response been, the public response, the reader's response to the 4 novels?
Well, people who read them usually like them. I haven't had, I think, one negative review, and that person was, I kind of was able and Googled a researcher, and she was a born again, and she had, what is that? The thing where there's going to be the left behind people. And anyway, so she didn't like them. So I think that was a political thing. But mostly people really like them, and I think the number is growing. But it's a very slow. There's, 300,000 books a year being published, and if you don't have really thousands of dollars for marketing, it's hard to get known.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, S.L. Stoner, what the 5th novel's about.
Actually, the first draft is done, and Sage doesn't really cotton to horses. But he's finding himself in Central Oregon with the cowboys. And it's about the range war that actually happened in Oregon. And there was a lot of stuff I didn't know about that either. And it's very interesting. And it's very interesting about how what the federal government did had such an impact on Central Oregon and the people there. So sheeps and cows and gold panning and stuff like that.
And is there a 6th in the works?
Oh no, I don't.
Time,
I don't have number 6 in mind, because you know when I do them, it's pretty intensive research, and so I can't really clutter my head up with that. And I just, as soon as I finish one, I look for an inspiration, and there you have it.
Thank you, Susan Stoner.